She ignored the man at the food truck, not knowing he was a millionaire CEO. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. It was a blazing summer afternoon in downtown New York. The streets shimmered with heat rising off the pavement, and the air carried the smell of roasted garlic and frying oil. A bright yellow food truck named Sunny Bites stood parked at the corner of 6th Avenue and 38th Street, its small fan working overtime to fight the heavy air. Behind the window, 24-year-old Maya Lee moved with practice speed-flipping patties, wrapping sandwiches, calling out orders with the rhythm of someone who had no choice but to keep going. Her arms were streaked with tiny burns, the kind you get from a fryer that never rests. The tip jar beside her held a few crumpled bills and a lonely quarter. Yet even in the chaos, her eyes stayed focused, her jaw set with quiet determination. She was behind on rent again, and the power bill was due in 2 days. But right now, she had customers waiting, and no time for fear. A line stretched from the truck down the block. Office workers in pressed shirts checked their watches, delivery drivers scrolled on their phones, and one man at the very end simply stood still. He wore a faded baseball cap and a plain gray t-shirt, his jeans a little dusty, his shoes ordinary. His name was Ethan Carter, but no one there would have guessed that the same man owned the Carter Foundation headquarters just 3 blocks away. Maya barely noticed him. To her, he was just another hungry customer waiting for lunch. When the crowd thinned, she glanced at the empty tray beside her and sighed. Only one sandwich left. She handed it to a woman in a blue dress who had been waiting before him. Then she turned to the man. "Sorry, we are sold out," she said quickly, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. "You can come back tomorrow morning if you like." The man smiled softly, his tone calm and polite. "That is all right. I was not even sure what I wanted." Maya nodded, already reaching for the cleaning cloth. "Yeah, well, it is a good problem to have, being too busy." Her words came out sharper than she intended. It had been a long day, and exhaustion made her sound cold. Still, he did not seem offended. He looked up at the small sign taped to the truck's side, Sunny Bites by Maya Lee, and repeated her name quietly under his breath, as if saving it for later. When he stepped back from the line, Maya caught a glimpse of his eyes, calm, observant, almost kind. For a second, she felt something strange, a small pull of curiosity, but she pushed it away. She had work to finish, and a life too full of problems for daydreams. By the time she closed the window and locked the cash drawer, the man was gone. She never even saw which direction he walked. She just wiped down the counter, wiped the sweat from her face, and told herself it was just another day on the street. But as she slid the last receipt into the box, she noticed a small note written on the back of one of the bills. "Great food, great heart." She frowned, unsure when someone had slipped it in. Maybe it was that quiet man, maybe not. Either way, she tucked it into her apron pocket without thinking. It would not be until weeks later that she realized that small, kind note came from the man who could change everything she thought she knew about kindness, success, and love. The morning sun came too early for Maya Lee. By 6, the city was already alive, delivery trucks rumbling past, pigeons scattering across the sidewalk, and the smell of coffee drifting from the cafe across the street. Her small apartment above a laundromat trembled every time the dryers downstairs started their spin cycle. Still, she was grateful to have a roof, even if it leaked when it rained. Maya rubbed the sleep from her eyes and glanced at the stack of overdue bills on the kitchen counter. Rent, utilities, insurance. Each envelope felt heavier than the last. She had stretched every dollar from yesterday's sales, but the math never worked in her favor. There was no safety net, no savings, just the food truck and her stubborn will to keep it running. She tied her apron around her waist and grabbed the small silver bracelet sitting beside the sink. The clasp was broken again, the chain split where it had once been soldered. It was her mother's. She had worn it since high school, a small reminder of the woman who taught her that pride and kindness could exist together. She slipped it into her pocket, promising herself she would fix it once she had enough money. By 8, Sunny Bites was parked in its usual spot. The morning crowd came fast: construction workers, nurses, a few regulars from the nearby office tower. Maya smiled when she saw Mrs. Givens, an older woman who lived down the street, walking slowly with her cane. Maya handed her a paper cup of coffee and a warm breakfast sandwich. "Still on the house," Maya said when the woman reached for her purse. "You will never get rich giving food away, child," Mrs. Givens replied with a grin. "Maybe not," Maya said, "but at least people will remember the taste." The woman chuckled and shuffled away. Maya watched her go, her chest tight but proud. The truth was, she barely made enough to cover costs, yet she could never bring herself to charge those who had nothing. She had known hunger once. She still remembered what it felt like to stand in line for hours at a church kitchen when her mother was sick. At noon, the heat settled in heavy waves, the street shimmered, and the smell of oil filled the air. Business slowed. Maya sat on the truck's step, fanning herself with a receipt. A voice startled her. "Is this seat taken?" She looked up. It was a man in a baseball cap and plain shirt, the same man from last week. Her heart skipped for a moment. "You again," she said, half smiling. "Do not tell me you want the sandwich we ran out of." He laughed quietly. "I learned my lesson. Maybe today I will be lucky." "Well, I cannot promise luck, but I can offer you lemonade. On the house. It is too hot to argue." He accepted, taking a sip. "You run this truck all by yourself?" "Mostly. Sometimes my brother helps when he is not studying, but yeah, it is just me." He nodded thoughtfully, watching her work. There was no judgment in his expression, only curiosity. "So why a food truck?" he asked. Maya wiped her hands on her apron. "Because a restaurant needs money I do not have, and because food trucks move. They survive." He smiled. "That is a good answer." A moment of quiet passed between them, filled only by the hum of the city. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and frowned slightly, as if remembering who he was supposed to be. "Well," he said, standing, "thank you for the drink, Maya." "You remembered my name?" she said, surprised. "Hard to forget," he replied with a small nod, and walked away. When he disappeared into the crowd, Maya found herself staring after him, wondering why a man who looked so ordinary carried himself with such calm confidence. Something about him felt different. Later that evening, as she closed up, she noticed another note taped to the side of her truck. It was written in neat handwriting. "The way you treat people is rare. Keep going." There was no signature. She smiled faintly, slipping it next to the first note she had saved. She did not know it yet, but the stranger she thought she would never see again was not finished crossing her path. His world and hers were about to collide in a way that neither of them could have imagined. 2 days later, Maya woke before dawn. The air was cooler than usual, and for a moment she just stood by the window listening to the soft hum of the city coming alive. Delivery trucks rumbled in the distance, the neon lights of nearby diners flickered, and somewhere a siren wailed faintly. She took a deep breath, pulled her hair into a messy bun, and whispered to herself, "Another day, another chance." By 7, Sunny Bites was back at its corner on 6th Avenue. The smell of grilled onions and coffee drifted down the street, luring in the early office crowd. Maya moved quickly and quietly, her hands sure and steady. Despite her exhaustion, she found peace in the rhythm of her work, the hiss of oil, the scrape of a spatula, the clatter of coins in the register. Around mid-morning, her phone buzzed. A text from her brother. School called. "Tuition is still short." Maya stared at the message, her stomach tightening. She typed back, "I will handle it." She always did. A familiar voice pulled her out of her thoughts. "Busy as always?" She turned, and there he was again, the man in the plain gray t-shirt and baseball cap. Today he wore dark jeans and sunglasses, but his calm, polite tone was unmistakable. "Busy is good," she replied, trying not to smile. "Keeps me from thinking too much." He chuckled. "Maybe that is why I like coming here. You make it look easy." "It is not," she said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "But I do not have the luxury of quitting." He nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "You remind me of someone I used to know." "Yeah? Who?" she asked. "My mother," he said simply. "She worked 2 jobs so that I could go to college. She never complained, just kept going." Something in his voice softened her. "Sounds like she raised a good man." He smiled faintly, almost shyly. She tried. Then, after a pause, "Would you mind if I got 2 sandwiches today? One for me, and one for someone who might need it." "Sure," Maya said, wrapping them quickly. "You can take one of the extra ones. On the house." He reached for his wallet, but she shook her head. "Do not argue. It is my good deed for the day." Their eyes met briefly, and for the first time, she noticed how steady his were. Not the restless eyes of a city man, but calm, observant, kind. He took the sandwiches, said thank you, and disappeared into the crowd once again. Maya exhaled. trying to push the strange warmth in her chest aside. Customers came and went, and soon the day blurred into evening. The rush ended, and she began cleaning up, humming softly to herself. When she stepped outside to throw away the trash, she saw something unusual. Across the street, near the bus stop, the same man was talking to a homeless veteran who sat by the lamppost every night. Maya watched as he handed the man one of the sandwiches she had made, then sat down beside him, listening. No cameras, no audience, just quiet conversation between two people who looked like they belonged to different worlds. The scene struck her harder than she expected. She had seen people drop money before and walk away quickly, afraid of dirt or shame. But this man stayed. He listened. When he stood to leave, he glanced across the street, caught her watching, and gave a small nod. She lifted a hand, half in greeting, half in apology for staring. That night, after closing the truck, Maya could not sleep. She kept thinking about the stranger, the way he spoke, the way he listened, and the kindness that did not feel rehearsed. She reached into the drawer beside her bed and pulled out the 2 notes he had left before. The handwriting was identical. Now she knew for sure they were his. Under the flickering light, she whispered, "Who are you really?" The next morning, an email appeared in her inbox from an address she did not recognize. info@carterfoundation.org. The subject line read, "Catering Inquiry Community Event." She blinked, confused but intrigued. The message was brief and polite. "Dear Ms. Lee, we are impressed by your food and your work ethic. The Carter Foundation would like to discuss a potential partnership for our upcoming community initiative. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. E. Carter." Maya's heart pounded. She read the name twice, then 3 times. E. Carter. She did not know what it meant yet, but deep down, something told her this was not coincidence. The man from the food truck was about to step fully into her world and change everything. The next morning, Maya sat at the small counter inside her food truck, staring at her phone screen. The email from the Carter Foundation still glowed brightly, as if it were testing her courage. She read it again, slowly this time, tracing every word with her thumb. Partnership. Community initiative. E. Carter. Her heart raced. Could it be him? The quiet man with the calm eyes and worn baseball cap? It did not seem possible. Still, something about the way the email was worded, the warmth behind the professionalism felt familiar. She closed her eyes and whispered, "This has to be a joke." But the address was real. She checked online and found the Carter Foundation listed among the top philanthropic organizations in New York, specializing in community development and food programs. Their logo even matched the one in the email signature. By noon, she finally gathered the courage to call the number provided. The line rang twice before a friendly assistant answered. "Carter Foundation, this is Emily speaking." "Hi, this is Maya Lee from Sunny Bites," she said nervously. "I received an email about a potential catering partnership." "Oh yes," Emily replied warmly. "Mr. Carter mentioned you. He would like to meet tomorrow afternoon if you are available." Maya froze. "Mr. Carter himself?" "That is correct," the assistant said. "At our headquarters on Lexington Avenue, 2 p.m. After hanging up, Maya just sat in silence. The city outside roared with life horns, footsteps, chatter, but inside her truck everything felt still. She wiped her palms on her apron and laughed softly to herself. "What are you getting into, Maya?" The next day, she dressed as best as she could, a clean white blouse, dark jeans, and the same silver bracelet she had mended with a cheap clasp. She took the subway, holding onto the rail as the train rattled beneath the city. Each stop brought a new wave of doubt. When she reached the Carter Foundation building, she almost turned around. The glass tower stretched high into the clouds, reflecting the city like a mirror. She stood at the entrance, feeling small against the polished marble and revolving doors. Inside, everything gleamed: marble floors, soft jazz playing overhead, people in tailored suits moving with purpose. A receptionist guided her to the elevator. "Top floor," the woman said kindly. "Mr. Carter is expecting you." The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a sunlit office lined with plants and modern art. And there he was, no cap, no plain t-shirt, just a navy suit that fit perfectly. The same eyes, though calm, kind, steady. Maya froze. "It was you," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "I was hoping you would call." She blinked, trying to process what she was seeing. You run this place?" He nodded. "Carter Foods and the Carter Foundation. I prefer to see both sides, the business and the people." Her voice trembled. "So all this time you were just pretending?" I was never pretending, he said gently. Sometimes I visit our community partners in person. It helps me remember why we do what we do. Maya crossed her arms, half embarrassed, half defensive. You could have told me who you were. I could have, he said, his tone steady. But I wanted to see how you treated someone who had nothing to offer, and you passed that test with more grace than you realize. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was heavy, charged with truth. Finally, he gestured toward the window. Maya, I want you to cater an event for us next month, a pilot program called Community Kitchen. It is a project to support small vendors and food truck owners. I believe you can help lead it. She stared at him. Led it? Me? Yes, he said simply. You have the heart for it. That matters more than experience. Maya shook her head, overwhelmed. I am just one person trying to stay afloat. I do not belong in places like this. Ethan stepped closer, his voice soft but certain. You belong exactly where your kindness takes you. Let us start there. He slid a small velvet pouch across the desk. You left this in your truck. She opened it and gasped. Inside was her silver bracelet, perfectly repaired, gleaming under the light. Consider it a reminder, he said. Sometimes what is broken can be made stronger. Maya felt her throat tighten. She looked down at the bracelet, then back at him. Why are you doing this for me? Because you reminded me of who I used to be, he said. And people like you keep this city alive. Outside, the skyline burned gold in the late afternoon Sunday. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt something unfamiliar hope. The following week felt like a blur for Maya Lee. Her food truck ran as usual in the mornings. But every afternoon she traveled across town to meet with the Carter Foundation team. What started as a catering job had quickly become something far more meaningful. Ethan Carter had given her not just an opportunity, but a purpose she had not known she was searching for. The Foundation's project, called Community Kitchen, aimed to bring together small local vendors and train them to provide affordable meals for low-income families. The idea sounded simple, but the logistics were overwhelming. Maya found herself surrounded by chefs, accountants, and marketing directors, people with degrees and experience she could only dream of. On the first day of planning, she sat at a long glass table, nervously stirring her coffee while everyone else spoke in acronyms she barely understood. Ethan watched from across the room, his expression calm. When the discussion grew tense, he finally stood. Let us remember, he said, his voice steady but firm. This program is not about numbers or branding. It is about people. That is why Maya is here. She understands the community we want to reach. The room fell silent. Maya felt every pair of eyes turned toward her. She swallowed hard and managed to say, I just want to make sure no one goes home hungry. That is all I know how to do. Ethan smiled. That is exactly what we need. After the meeting, he caught up with her in the hallway. You did great, he said. I barely spoke, she replied, shaking her head. Sometimes, he said, the right words do not need to be loud to matter. They shared a quiet moment before the elevator doors opened and other employees stepped in. The conversation ended, but the connection between them lingered. Over the next few weeks, Maya worked tirelessly testing recipes, coordinating with vendors, and helping design a system that would allow food trucks to donate unsold meals at the end of each day. She started to feel at home in the Foundation's office, even though she still drove Sunny Bites every morning. One evening, after a long day, she stopped by the Foundation's rooftop garden to catch her breath. The city lights sparkled below, stretching endlessly across the horizon. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Ethan approaching, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. You still here? He asked with a smile. Just thinking, she said softly, about how strange all this feels. A month ago, I was worried about running out of lettuce. Now I am helping design a citywide food program. He leaned on the railing beside her. You earned it. I just gave you a door. You chose to walk through it. Maya smiled faintly. I guess I did. Ethan's tone grew thoughtful. You know, when I met you at that food truck, I was not sure what I was looking for. Maybe I was tired of boardrooms and profits. Maybe I just wanted to see kindness without a headline. She looked at him, realizing how different he seemed outside. The suit, no pretense, no power play, just sincerity. And did you find it? She asked. He met her eyes. I think I did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind carried the scent of basil from the rooftop garden. Somewhere below, the faint hum of the city filled the silence. Then Maya looked down at the silver bracelet around her wrist. You fixed this for me, she said quietly. No one has done something that thoughtful in a long time. Ethan smiled. It was never broken beyond repair. It just needed care. She turned toward him, her eyes glimmering under the lights. So do most people, I guess. He nodded, including me. As they stood there, the city seemed to slow down around them. Two lives that had begun on opposite sides of a counter were now moving toward the same horizon. When Maya finally returned home that night, she checked her phone. An email from Ethan awaited her, containing the official announcement for the Community Kitchen Launch Gala. Her name was listed as Project Lead. She sat on her small couch, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time, the word success did not feel like a dream for other people. It felt like something she had built herself with her hands, her heart, and the unexpected kindness of a man who had seen her for who she truly was. Maya looked out the window toward the skyline and whispered, "Thank you, Ethan." And somewhere in that city of millions, Ethan Carter was likely thinking the very same thing. The day of the Community Kitchen Launch Gala arrived sooner than Maya Lee expected. The event was held at the Grand Ballroom of the Carter Foundation building, a place she had only ever seen from the street before. That night, the space was filled with music, lights, and laughter. Dozens of food vendors from across the city were gathered, each offering a taste of their signature dishes. Banners hung from the ceiling with the words "Kindness feeds the city." Maya stood near the entrance in a simple navy dress she had borrowed from her neighbor. Her hair was tied back neatly, and the silver bracelet around her wrist caught the light each time she moved. She felt completely out of place among the glittering guests in suits and gowns, yet there was a quiet pride inside her. She had helped make this happen. Ethan Carter moved through the crowd with effortless grace, shaking hands, answering questions, and introducing donors to small business owners. But every so often, his eyes would drift toward Maya, making sure she was not lost in the crowd. When he finally reached her, she smiled nervously. "I did not think I would see you tonight. You have been busy." "I have been looking for you," he said, offering her a glass of sparkling water. "You are the reason this night exists, Maya." She laughed softly. "I just helped organize it." He shook his head. "You gave it heart. That is something we cannot teach." Before she could respond, a man in a gray suit approached. "Mr. Carter, the mayor would like a few words before dinner." Ethan turned to her. "Stay close. I will come back after the speech." Maya nodded and watched him walk toward the stage. As he began to speak, she felt a strange mixture of admiration and disbelief. This was the same man who once stood at her food truck in a faded t-shirt, waiting patiently for a sandwich that never came. Now he stood beneath golden lights, addressing city leaders and philanthropists. Ethan spoke about community, second chances, and the power of small acts. "It does not take wealth to make a difference," he said, his voice clear and steady. "It takes empathy. Tonight I want to honor the people who live that truth every day." He paused and turned his gaze toward Maya. "One of them is here with us tonight. She reminded me that leadership means listening, and that success means nothing if it does not lift others. Please join me in thanking Maya Lee, the driving spirit behind Community Kitchen." The crowd erupted in applause. Maya's heart pounded as faces turned toward her. She wanted to hide, but Ethan's proud smile anchored her in place. She nodded gratefully, blinking back tears. After the speech, people surrounded her: vendors, journalists, even donors offering congratulations and handshakes. It felt surreal. She had spent years being invisible, and suddenly everyone saw her. Later, as the night quieted, Ethan found her again near the dessert table. "You handled that perfectly," he said. "I almost ran out the back door," she admitted. He laughed softly. "That would have been a shame. I still owe you a dance." Maya blinked. "A dance?" "There is music," he said, gesturing toward the small jazz band playing in the corner. "Why not?" For a moment she hesitated. Then she nodded. He took her hand, and they stepped onto the dance floor. The music was slow, gentle. Maya's nerves began to fade as they moved together, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "I never imagined this," she whispered. "Neither did I," he replied. "But I am glad fate had other plans." As the song ended, the crowd applauded politely, but Maya barely heard them. In that moment, the noise, the lights, and the grandeur all faded away. There was only Ethan's steady, kind, real. When they stepped outside later, the city air was cool and quiet. The skyline shimmered in the distance. Ethan looked at her, his expression soft. "Maya," he said, "I want you to know that this is not just about business for me. You have changed how I see everything: success, people, even myself." She met his eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "You changed me too." He smiled, and for a moment neither spoke. The silence said enough. The night ended not with fireworks or fanfare, but with something far rarer: two people standing on equal ground, finally understanding what it meant to see and be seen. The morning after the gala, Maya Lee woke to a sky painted soft gray. The city outside her apartment was quieter than usual, the kind of calm that comes after a long celebration. She sat on the edge of her bed, the silver bracelet glinting faintly in the muted light. Everything about last night felt unreal: the applause, the speeches, the dance with Ethan Carter. For a few seconds, she allowed herself to smile. But then, as her eyes fell on the stack of unopened bills on the counter, the old familiar weight settled back in her chest. The food truck still needed repairs. Her brother's tuition was still due. The foundation's offer had changed her world, but her life was not magically fixed. At 9, her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Good morning, Maya. Meeting at the foundation today at 11. Hope you can join us. I have something important to show you." She quickly typed back, "I will be there." By 11, she was walking through the glass doors of the Carter Foundation. The building looked the same, but she felt different, more grounded, yet uncertain. When she reached the top floor, Ethan was waiting in the hallway with 2 cups of coffee. "Morning," he said, handing her one. "I thought you might need this." "Thank you," she said softly. "So, what is this surprise?" He smiled. "You will see." He led her to a conference room where a few board members were already seated. A digital presentation displayed plans for the next phase of Community Kitchen, expansion to 3 more boroughs, new scholarships for food truck owners, and a partnership with local community centers. Maya's jaw dropped as Ethan explained each slide. "This," he said, turning to her, "is what you helped inspire. We want you to oversee the new mentorship program. You would be training small business owners to manage their operations and connect with communities." Maya blinked in disbelief. "You want me to teach others?" "Ethan, I am still figuring things out myself." "That is exactly why you are perfect for it," he said. "You understand the struggle. You built something out of nothing. That experience cannot be taught in a classroom." The board members nodded in agreement. One of them, a woman in her 50s, added, "We need more leaders who have lived what they are teaching. You are that voice, Miss Lee." Maya felt her throat tighten. "I do not know what to say." Ethan smiled. "Say yes." After the meeting, as they walked out onto the terrace overlooking the city, Maya spoke quietly. "I am scared, Ethan. What if I fail?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Failure is part of the process. The only real failure is not trying." She nodded, but her eyes shimmered with tears. "You believe in me more than I do. Then borrow my belief," he said, "until you have your own." For a moment the city wind swept between them, carrying the faint sound of car horns and life below. Maya took a deep breath. "All right," she said. "I will do it." Ethan smiled, relief flickering in his expression. "I knew you would." Later that evening, Maya returned to her food truck. The familiar scent of grilled bread and coffee grounded her. She ran her hand along the counter, remembering every long night, every time she had nearly given up. Then she taped a small handwritten sign to the side of the truck, "Closed for a few days, starting something new." As she stood there, a couple walked by, reading the sign. The woman turned to her and said, "You are the one who spoke at the gala, right? The girl from Sunny Bites?" Maya smiled, a little embarrassed. "Yes, that is me." The woman nodded warmly. "You inspired a lot of people last night. My husband is opening his own food truck. He said if you could do it, so could he." Maya felt her chest swell with emotion. "Tell him to keep going," she said. "The beginning is always the hardest." When the couple walked away, Maya looked up at the skyline. The city lights blinked to life one by one, and somewhere out there, she knew Ethan was still working late, probably planning the next phase of their project. For the first time, she realized something important. This was not just Ethan's foundation anymore. It was theirs, built from kindness, trust, and the belief that small acts could create big change. She locked up the truck, whispered, "Thank you, Mom," and walked away with the quiet confidence of someone finally learning to believe in herself. 3 months later, the Community Kitchen project had become more than a pilot program. It had turned into a movement spreading across the city. Dozens of food trucks and small vendors joined under Maya Lee's mentorship, learning how to share resources and donate meals at the end of each day. News outlets began covering the initiative, calling it a quiet revolution of kindness. Every morning, Maya still started her day at Sunny Bites. Though her routine had changed, she no longer worked just for survival. She worked with purpose. Her brother helped out before heading to college, proud to see her name mentioned in local papers. Customers began to recognize her, not only as the girl who sold the best breakfast sandwiches in Midtown, but as the woman who had helped build something meaningful. Yet, despite all the success, Maya's heart carried a quiet uncertainty. Ethan Carter remained a constant presence at the foundation, guiding her and the team. Their friendship had deepened into something close and unspoken, but neither had dared to name it. They shared coffee breaks, late-night strategy calls, and long conversations about life. Every glance between them carried something fragile, something growing. One evening, as the sun sank behind the skyline, Maya was finalizing a report at her desk when Ethan knocked on her office door. "Working late again?" he asked, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. She smiled tiredly. "You say that like you are not doing the same thing." He laughed. "Fair enough. Mind if I join you?" She nodded. He set 1 cup beside her laptop and sat across from her. For a while, they just sipped in silence, the hum of the city muffled behind the glass windows. Then Ethan spoke quietly. "Maya, do you ever think about how far you have come?" She looked down at her hands. "Sometimes, but I still feel like that girl in the food truck, trying to keep everything from falling apart." "That is exactly why people trust you," he said. "You never forgot who you are." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "And what about you, Ethan? Have you changed?" He thought for a moment before answering. "I think I finally learned that leadership is not about control. It is about care. You taught me that." Her chest tightened. "You give me too much credit. I do not think I give you enough," he said softly. For a moment, their eyes held. The air between them was filled with words neither dared to speak. Then Ethan leaned back and smiled gently. "There is something else I wanted to show you." He pulled out a small photo from his pocket. It was of a new building under construction, a community hub in Brooklyn. "This will be the first permanent community kitchen center," he said. "A place where families can cook, learn, and eat together. I want you to run it." Maya froze. "Ethan, that is huge. I do not know if I can handle something like that." He shook his head. "You already are handling something like that. You have been doing it every single day." Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away. "You really believe I can do this?" He smiled. "I do. And one day, I hope you will believe it too." She looked at the photo again, her heart full. "Then yes," she said. "I will do it." He reached across the desk and took her hand, just for a moment, steady and reassuring. "I knew you would say that." When he stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. "By the way," he added, "next week is the 1-year anniversary of Sunny Bites. Let me plan something special." She laughed. "Ethan, I do not need a party." "It will not be a party," he said with a playful grin. "Just a surprise." Before she could argue, he was gone. That night, as Maya closed her laptop and looked around the quiet office, she felt something she had not felt in years: peace. Not the kind that comes from escaping hardship, but the kind that comes from finally finding where she belonged. When she walked outside, the city lights reflected off the silver bracelet on her wrist. The same bracelet that once symbolized struggle now shimmered like proof of survival. She whispered to herself, "Maybe this is what hope really looks like." And though she did not know what Ethan was planning, deep down, she sensed that whatever came next would change not only her life but his as well. The following Saturday morning dawned bright and golden, the kind of morning that made even New York City feel gentle. Maya Lee unlocked the door of her food truck, humming softly as she prepared for another busy day. She had almost forgotten Ethan Carter's cryptic message about a surprise, almost. At 10 o'clock, her brother stopped by to help set up the tables outside. The line of customers grew quickly, drawn by the familiar smell of grilled bread and roasted coffee beans. Everything felt normal until a group of people began to gather across the street. Maya looked up, frowning. "What is going on over there?" she asked. Her brother grinned. "I think that is your surprise." Before she could respond, a familiar black car pulled up. Ethan stepped out, dressed not in his usual suit but in rolled-up sleeves and sneakers. Behind him followed a small crowd: foundation staff, news reporters, and several of the food truck owners who had joined Community Kitchen. He walked toward her with that calm, steady smile she had come to recognize. "Good morning, Maya," he said. "What are you doing?" she asked, trying not to laugh. "Celebrating something worth celebrating," he said. "Look around." Maya turned and saw that every food truck in the Community Kitchen program had parked along the block, creating a vibrant street festival. Colorful banners hung from lamp posts reading "One Kindness Day," in honor of Maya Lee and Sunny Bites. Her breath caught. "Ethan, you did not." "I did," he said simply. "You once told me you wanted people to remember the taste of kindness. So I thought, why not give the whole city a reason to?" Tears blurred her vision. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. The event quickly filled with life music, laughter, the sizzling sound of food cooking. Strangers chatted, families shared meals, and reporters interviewed vendors about their stories. It was everything Maya had ever dreamed of but had never believed possible. As the afternoon went on, Ethan led her to a small stage set up in front of her truck. "There is one more thing," he said quietly. She looked nervous. "Ethan, I cannot make another speech. I will cry." He smiled. "Then let me do the talking." He stepped up to the microphone as the crowd quieted. "1 year ago," he began, "a young woman with a food truck gave me something I did not know I was missing. She reminded me that real success is not measured by profit, but by purpose. That kindness, when shared, multiplies. Because of her, Community Kitchen exists, and because of her, thousands of people across this city will never go hungry again." He turned toward her. "Maya Lee, thank you for showing all of us that one act of compassion can change a life." The audience erupted in applause. Maya's cheeks were wet with tears, but her smile glowed brighter than the afternoon sunday. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver bracelet, the same one he had repaired months ago. This time, it shimmered even more beautifully, with a tiny engraved inscription inside, "Stronger Together." He took her hand and fastened it gently around her wrist. "It is a new clasp," he said softly, "a reminder that what is rebuilt can last." Maya laughed through her tears. "You just cannot stop fixing things, can you? Only the ones that matter," he said. The crowd cheered again. Cameras flashed, and for the first time in her life, Maya did not hide from the attention. She stood tall beside him, her heart steady and full. As the evening light faded, the two of them walked down the street together, passing families eating and children playing near the trucks. The city that once felt too big now felt like home. Ethan looked at her, his voice gentle but certain. "So, what do you think we should do next?" Maya smiled. "Keep feeding people. Keep believing in them. Keep believing in us." He nodded, his eyes warm. "Then let us keep going, together." As the camera of life pulled back past the glowing food trucks, past the bustling street, and into the soft blush of twilight, one thing became clear. The story that had begun with a mistake at a food truck had become something extraordinary. A simple act of kindness had built a bridge between two worlds. And on that bridge, love had quietly found its home. Voiceover, kindness. The true recipe for love, for change, and for a life worth living.